For 11 straight years, a wildlife data analyst in New York City had tracked the same numbers moving in the same direction, without a single exception. Rat sighting reports climbing, block by block, burrow by burrow, year after year. Then one November morning, in a stretch of Upper Manhattan that had logged the worst rat density of any zone in her entire dataset for 6 years running, the number did something it had never done once in over a decade. It dropped, sharply, and nothing in the city's rat control budget explained why. Before we get into what she found, hit subscribe if you want more stories about the wildlife shifts happening in plain sight, in places nobody's watching. New York City has a rat problem most people underestimate, even the people who live there. Norway rats aren't native to this continent. They arrived in the 1700s, stowed away in cargo holds from Europe, the same way they'd already spread to nearly every port city 3 centuries of transatlantic trade had touched. By the time anyone in North America realized what was happening, the population was already established, breeding, and effectively uncountable. In 2014, a Columbia University statistician estimated roughly 2 million rats across the 5 boroughs using complaint data from the city's 311 system. By 2023, a follow-up study using the same method put the number closer to 3 million, nearly 1 rat for every 3 residents of the city. A 50% increase in under a decade, despite every removal effort the city could fund in that window. That's not a background nuisance. Norway rats chew through electrical wiring, sparking fires in parking structures. They tunnel under building foundations, weakening them in ways owners don't discover until years of damage has already compounded, sometimes not until a wall or a stairwell starts failing outright. They contaminate food supply chains in a city that feeds 8 million people daily, moving between restaurant kitchens, grocery storage rooms, and open garbage without any of the boundaries humans assume are there. They carry dozens of documented pathogens, and New York logged a record number of leptospirosis cases in 2023 alone, a disease spread largely through rat urine contaminating standing water and soil. Nationally, rat damage costs American cities billions of dollars a year, and in New York specifically, the toll tops $1 billion once infrastructure repair, medical costs, and spoiled food are all counted together. So the city fought back hard. A $32 million rat reduction initiative launched in 2017, targeting the worst neighborhoods with a goal of cutting the population by 70%. Solar-powered trash compactors went up across hundreds of locations. Pickup schedules increased. Illegal dumping fines went up. The rats absorbed every intervention and kept multiplying. The city pumped carbon monoxide into borough systems, deployed contracted extermination teams with snap traps across entire blocks, sent hunting dogs into the streets at night, clearing dozens of rats per shift. In 2023, it hired a dedicated rat czar, a wildlife management director, whose entire job was pushing that number down. The position made international headlines. The same year it was created, the citywide rat population crossed 3 million anyway. A longtime exterminator summed it up bluntly at a city council hearing. Give it a couple of months, and the numbers are right back where they started. Nothing the city had tried had ever managed to bend that curve for long. Which is exactly why that November data point didn't make sense. Rat sightings in a specific corridor of Upper Manhattan weren't just leveling off, they were falling, consistently, in a pattern the city's entire multi-million-dollar program had never managed to produce anywhere else. A separate researcher, who'd spent years cross-referencing bird monitoring routes with mammal activity data across the 5 boroughs, got that data set and spent nearly 3 weeks running it against every variable his own baseline data included: seasonal patterns, construction activity, sanitation schedules, weather, anything that might explain a drop that sharp in a zone that had never once shown one. Nothing lined up. So he drove out there himself, climbed to the roof of a nearby parking structure at dusk, and looked up. What he found wasn't one species, it was 3 stacked on top of each other across the hours of the day. Peregrine falcons had re-established a nesting pair 2 blocks from the exact cluster, showing the steepest decline. Peregrines were wiped out across the entire eastern United States by the 1960s. D, DT thinned their eggshells until breeding populations collapsed from Maine to Florida, a bird that had nested on cliff faces for longer than modern humans have existed, gone from most of the continent inside a couple of decades. A reintroduction program starting in the 1970s, using captive-bred birds raised in labs and released from towers and building ledges, slowly brought them back, one hand-raised chick at a time. New York City turned out to be extraordinary habitat for them, for a reason nobody had planned for. Skyscraper facades function almost exactly like the cliff faces peregrines evolved to nest on, and the city's huge, reliable pigeon population gave them more food, packed into a smaller territory, than most wild cliff environments ever could. By the 2020s, the city had close to 30 breeding pairs, the highest urban density of this bird anywhere in North America. Here's where it's worth being precise, because it's the part most retellings of this story get wrong, including the version that originally inspired this one. Peregrine falcons are specialists. Somewhere between 77 and 99% of their diet is other birds, caught in midair during a high-speed dive that can exceed 200 miles an hour, an entirely different hunting style from swooping down on something moving across pavement. They occasionally take a rat crossing open ground, but it's the exception, not the rule. City wildlife officials have said plainly that falcons alone were never going to solve New York's rat problem because they simply don't hunt mammals as a habit. The falcon's presence in this story matters, but not because it's out there personally picking off rats every night. Its role is smaller and stranger than that. The real weight falls on two other birds that came back to this city around the same time, for reasons that also had nothing to do with rats. Great horned owls have quietly established breeding pairs in Central Park, Prospect Park, and Pelham Bay Park at densities wildlife surveys from 20 years ago never recorded. Unlike falcons, owls are built for exactly this job. Rats make up a substantial part of a great horned owl's diet wherever the two overlap. An owl's flight is close to silent. The leading edge of its feathers is serrated in a way that breaks up the turbulence that normally makes a bird's wing beats audible. An adaptation that took millions of years to evolve and happens to work perfectly against an animal that's never had to defend against it. That matters enormously here because a Norway rat's threat detection is tuned almost entirely to sound and lateral movement at ground level. It can hear a cat's paw or a dog's approach from yards away. It has no real defense against something arriving from above in total silence, in the dark. At exactly the hour, it's already out foraging in the open. Red-tailed hawks are doing the daylight version of the same job. They now nest on building ledges and water towers across all 5 boroughs at numbers well beyond their historic range in the city, the most famous case being a red-tail named Pale Male, who took up residence on a Fifth Avenue building in the 1990s and became something of a local celebrity, watched by birders through binoculars from the sidewalk below for years. Hawks hunt the same open lots, construction sites, and park edges that owls patrol at night, just during the hours when owls have gone quiet and rats, feeling safer in daylight, take more risks moving across open ground. Where a red-tail's daytime territory overlaps with an owl's night territory, and both sit inside a falcon's broader hunting range, the rat complaint data shows the steepest, most sustained declines anywhere in the researchers' dataset, not because of any one bird, but because together they cover nearly the full 24-hour cycle, leaving almost no window for a rat to move between its burrow and a food source without crossing into somebody's hunting ground. None of this was planned, not one piece of it. The falcon reintroduction program existed to save a species from extinction, full stop. Nobody wrote New York City rat suppression into that plan, because at the time, almost nobody involved was thinking about rats at all. The owl population expanding into city parks got logged by birdwatchers filing casual sighting reports, not by pest control agencies running formal surveys. The hawks nesting on water towers got documented by wildlife photographers chasing a good shot, not by the city's own rat task force. The $32 million rat initiative never once mentions raptors in its own planning paperwork. 3 native species, recovering for reasons that had nothing to do with each other and decades apart, ended up quietly stacking into the most effective rat suppression system this city has had, without a single meeting or budget line acknowledging it was happening. And it took 11 years of one analyst's own numbers turning in a direction she couldn't explain before anyone connected it to what was happening 60 feet over her head. There's a catch to all of this, and it's a serious one. Rat poison doesn't stop working once a rat eats it. A poisoned rat moves slower and forages more sluggishly before it dies, which makes it an easier catch right up until an owl or a hawk eats that rat, and a fraction of the poison moves with it into the bird's bloodstream. One poisoned rat probably isn't enough to cause real harm, but a hunting territory means dozens of rats a month, month after month, and the dose accumulates the same way it did in the food chain that nearly wiped out these same species the first time around, just with a different chemical doing the accumulating this time. This isn't a hypothetical risk. Testing on dead raptors found in and around New York City parks between 2018 and 2023 found detectable rodenticide in the large majority of them. Flacco, the owl who escaped from the Central Park Zoo and became a citywide celebrity before he died flying into a building in 2024, was found with 4 different anticoagulant rodenticides in his system. Lima, the longtime mate of Pale Male himself, died with rat poison in her liver. The exact predators this fragile, accidental system depends on are quietly absorbing the poison meant to kill the thing they're hunting, and right now, no city rat control budget accounts for that risk at all. In specific zones where owl nesting territory and hawk daytime territory overlap most tightly, mostly the blocks bordering the city's larger parks, the complaint data shows declines that stretch across a longer daily window than either predator produces on its own. A smaller raptor, the American kestrel, has been quietly present in some of these same corridors too, easy to miss entirely since it's roughly the size of a robin, but part of the same broader pattern of raptors returning to airspace over this city that had gone functionally empty for most of the 20th century. That researcher went back to the same Upper Manhattan block several times over the following weeks, walking the perimeter around dusk on each visit, mostly just watching and waiting. On one trip, right at the edge of dark, he watched a great horned owl drop out of a tree along the park's perimeter and take a rat crossing an open stretch of lawn without a sound. No wing beat most people would ever notice. No warning the rat could have registered until it was already over. The whole thing lasted maybe 2 seconds, start to finish. He stood there for a while afterward, just looking at the empty grass in the dark. 11 years of watching numbers move in a spreadsheet, 3 consecutive seasons of declining complaint data in that exact cluster with no explanation attached. And this was the first time anyone on the project had actually seen the mechanism behind one of those numbers with their own eyes. It had been happening almost every night, 60 feet from where people walk their dogs, completely unnoticed. It's worth being honest about what this story isn't, too. It isn't proof that nature always fixes what people can't. Plenty of cities have healthy raptor populations and still have serious rat problems of their own. It isn't something anyone can replicate on command. You can't relocate an owl population the way you'd order more trash compactors. And even where these birds are already established, it took decades of quiet population growth before their effect on rats became visible in the data at all. What it is a reminder that the systems already running in a place don't always show up on the line item where you'd expect to find them. The city spent $32 million looking at street level, seriously and carefully, with real expertise behind every dollar. The most effective answer it never noticed was operating 60 feet above the pavement the entire time, in near total silence, completely outside the frame anyone had been watching, and it's now quietly depending on that same city not poisoning the very thing that's doing the job for free, whether the city realizes it or not. Tell me what you think in the comments. Can owl and hawk populations keep expanding fast enough and stay clean of enough poison to actually hold this line long term? Or is this a temporary, accidental win before the numbers start climbing again, once the novelty of a viral clip wears off and the rats simply learn to avoid the open ground the way they've learned to avoid everything else? And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, quiet shifts in wildlife happening right where nobody's looking. Subscribe, there's a new one coming soon.